What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. We've got another team review for you guys today. Before we start though, two quick notes. One, yes, Dynasty will be tomorrow. A lot of you have been asking about that. I'm going to do just 5 receivers that I think are going to go up in value in Dynasty leagues moving forward. And so that replaces the mock draft for this week. We are taking a week off just because we're going to wait 1 week for Fantasy Pros. Hopefully, like they said, they're releasing their 2021 mock drafting software after the Super Bowl. I have to think that means next week at some point it'll be released. So hopefully we can do a mock draft on there. It'll be a little bit better than what we were using before. Second note, I have a discount code on the website right now. If you sign up for any package, if you want all in, if you want just draft, just in season, it'd be weird to get just in season right now, but if you wanted to do it, you can. 15% off if you use the promo code FFA before May 1st. Once May 1st hits, it's full price for the rest of the season. So if you want to get in now, go over there and do it, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So let's go over this draft. And one more note. So I was looking through, I wanted in this video to do RB0. I wanted to find one of your teams that someone who went RB0, you don't have to win. I just wanted to break down an RB0 draft and just see how things went for you. But I couldn't really find any. I mean, there's a lot of submissions. I wasn't able to look through all of them. But if one of you have any teams that you did RB0, please send them in. And in the subject line, just like put RB0, put something about that. Because I want to go over one of them because I'm curious to see kind of how it worked out for you, because we want to see a bunch of different strategies. This one's a little bit different also than I've seen from a lot of the submissions, because a ton of people went 2 and 3 running backs. There's like 1, 2, 3. Like a lot of people took either running back, or they went, running back, wide receiver, then a bunch of running backs. Like most of you took a lot of running backs early, and this person was very, very even. Running back, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, running back. Like it was very, very even throughout the draft, and I thought they did an exceptional job. I think this is a really, really, really good draft, and so I definitely wanted to break it down. So for those of you listening on the podcast version on iTunes, Spotify, I will read through the team, but the rest of you can just see it on the screen. First round, Josh Jacobs, and this is a 12-team league. So Jacobs in the first round, he had the 11th pick. That is, I think in general where he was going. I don't really think he was going any earlier than that. I don't remember his exact ADP, but I think that was like roughly where he was going, was that turn pick. So Jacobs at the 111 gets Adams in the second round, then Allen Robinson, Jonathan Taylor in the 4th, goes to Terry McLaurin in the 5th, Kareem Hunt in the 6th round, quarterback in the 7th round, going with Josh Allen, then Antonio Gibson 8th, Mecole Hardman 9th, Mike Gesicki in the 10th, and then he rounds out the later rounds with Jalen Reagor, Jonnu Smith taking his second tight end, Drew Lock, second quarterback, New Orleans Saints defense, and Travion Williams. I don't think this league had a kicker, which is what you should do. I hate playing in leagues with kickers. It's no fun. Take kickers out of your leagues. So we're going to break down a little bit later in the video why exactly I love the draft. One thing looking back, there were very few busts. If you look through the majority of teams, I mean, we in general are keeping like 70 or probably like 25%. Like 75% of our team is just going on waivers, going out of our team through trades. But this team was one that I looked through that the vast majority of what they had at the end of the season was what they started the season with. Only did one trade that we'll look at in a second. Didn't do not very many waiver moves. I mean, there were still minor moves I'm sure he made, but not many major waiver moves. This is effectively what the team looked like at the end of the season. And so you could definitely, some of that is luck. And he admitted in the write-up that I mean, you have to get somewhat lucky during the draft. You have to have Adams have an historic season. Allen Robinson, I wouldn't call that lucky. I mean, he was coming off 100 receptions, so it wasn't shocking he had it. But Jonathan Taylor, I mean, a little bit gets bailed out by Marlon Mack getting injured. We have a good stretch of time of Kareem Hunt without Nick Chubb. Antonio Gibson, of course, has a really nice season as a rookie. And so I'm not going to say he was lucky, but if you look through the draft, there were very few busts, and that's really beneficial when you're trying to win a championship, is to not have guys get injured. So his thoughts in his write-up, he said he felt like he was chasing upside a little bit with Josh Allen in the 7th round, but he did also start a quarterback run. And remember, we talk about in these mock drafts that we do, you never want to end a run. So if you go through your pick and you're like, ooh, I really hope there's not a run at quarterback here, and then all the quarterbacks start getting taken off the board, you don't want to be the last person in your next round pick to be like, well, have to take a quarterback now because they're all going to be gone. You don't want to do that because everyone else got significantly more value than you. You're just taking, whoever they didn't want at effectively the same pick. And so he was able to start a quarterback run. That's fantastic. Obviously, Josh Allen works out, but Josh Allen was someone we were very high on over the summer because of the rushing upside. And that's something we're going to see this next season. You basically have to have that rushing upside with any quarterback that you take. At this point, you can't draft Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan. I mean, unless they have their games of 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, they're just not viable when you're comparing them to guys who are running for 40 or 50 yards. So he said he was chasing upside a little bit there, but he wanted to try and get that upside onto his team, and I fully support that decision. He was one of the quarterbacks we were definitely targeting last season. And he said the main thing was he went in without a set strategy for the early rounds. He was able to get Davante Adams 14th overall. I believe that's exactly how I started off my sleeper league. So I took Miles Sanders instead of Josh Jacobs in my first round pick. But then there was such a run at the running back position that I could have kind of ended running back. But I looked at it and said, well, Davante Adams is like a really, really good wide receiver. Let's just take him while everyone else is trying to get the 10th and 11th best running back. Let's just take potentially the best wide receiver. And so he definitely talked about that in his write-up, saying a lot of people get locked into that strategy. And I totally agree. They're saying, I got to grab these running backs early. That's kind of why I wanted to do a video on RB0, just to show you guys that it is possible to have a little bit of a different way of viewing things, and it can still absolutely work out taking wide receiver early. And so that definitely worked out for this guy. Taking Adams in the 2nd round, has his historic season, dominant in so many games. I mean, I'm not even talking like 20 points is usually good for a wide receiver. If you got 20 points from Adams, you were like, oh, I mean, that's a little disappointing. This dude was dropping 35, 40 points. Well, that's an exceptional competitive advantage over your opponents. Even when they're starting, lower end wide receiver ones, the gap with Adams was phenomenal. So Adams was obviously a league winner and just a staple of his team. And remember something we talk about, you're trying to leave the draft. We'll bring up the draft again. You're trying to leave the draft with 3, hopefully 4 just core pieces. So obviously you look 2nd round Adams, that's a core piece, right? You lock that in. But he had so many core pieces to end the season. Allen Robinson is a core piece. Josh Jacobs, I'm not going to say he had a phenomenal season, but I don't remember. It was 33 receptions, so he still was involved a little bit in the receiving game. He was the goal line back. He did have early down workload. He still had a solid year. So I would consider Jacobs a core piece. So you've already got 3 core pieces in the first 3 rounds. Taylor turns into a core piece. McLaurin and Kareem Hunt were really good pieces, but we will see trades one of them away. Josh Allen was a core piece, Gibson. So he hit on so many that it's not surprising he ends up winning the championship. But again, you don't need to be, have this good of a draft. You can hit on 3 or 4, hit on 1 in the trade, 1 in free agency, and then you've got your roster. So my thoughts. Again, I think it's an absolutely beautiful draft. I'm going to walk through each pick in a second here. But he was hitting on everything that we look at. We're looking for upside at every pick. Every pick, I want to say, what's their path? When you click the draft button, I want you to say, okay, what is the scenario where this person, if I'm taking them in the first 3 rounds, turns into a top 5 option at their position? Or if you're later than that, what's the scenario in which this player finishes as a wide receiver, running back, or tight end 1? If you can't even come up with a way in which that happens, they're not worth taking. Because if it's not in their range of outcomes, well, now you're hoping that they finish as a 2. You're hoping at some point maybe you can start them as a lower end option. No. We want to be drafting players who have that in their range of outcomes, and that's what he did. So I love that. And then late, disregarding floor, he took a few players where they could easily have been on free agency the next week, but they had the upside to be ones. And then, of course, as we talked about, not going in with just a locked-in strategy of saying, well, I'm in the later first round. In a lot of my mock drafts, I'm taking running back. That's just what I'm going to do. If Adams is there in the second round, grab him. He's a really good player. One thing I will say, just that's not like all fantastic news for this guy. Again, I'm never in love with taking 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends. I've had people make comments like, oh, what about 2 quarterback league? Yes, guys, if you're in a 2 quarterback league, you need to take 2 quarterbacks. That should go without saying. Is that I say only take 1 quarterback? Yeah, in a league where you only start 1 quarterback. But if you have to start 2 quarterbacks, you have to draft 2 quarterbacks. That should just go without saying. So I don't want to see that comment anymore. But yeah, in a 1 quarterback league, especially when you take Josh Allen in the 7th round, what are you taking Drew Lock for? I mean, just try and get another upside running back or wide receiver pick there, because the odds that you ended up starting Lock over Josh Allen are pretty low. And in those odds, it was basically Josh Allen got hurt and you could find someone on free agency. You don't need to draft Drew Lock there. So that was one thing. The multiple tight ends, I'm a little bit okay with it when they're late. So I wouldn't have drafted, like I always say, if you're taking Andrews, Waller, Kittle, Kelsey, don't take a tight end in the later rounds. But if you do like he did, you take Gesicki and Jonnu Smith, that's a fine strategy. I still don't love it, but it's better just be like, hey, I don't really know who's going to hit late. Let's take both. But when we kind of look back over the years, it's almost like, the answer is just no one hits late because all tight ends are trash besides the top 5, and we typically know who the top 5 are. And so you're spending 2 picks when all of them are basically the same. They're all kind of meh. Just take one, take your meh, and maybe you'll find one in free agency or maybe trade for one. But running backs and wide receivers, that's who we kind of want late. So that's basically it, though. Those are the only things I could even nitpick, and it was nitpicking because it was still a really good draft. So in-season moves, what's he do? We see only trade he makes is trading away Kareem Hunt for Calvin Ridley. He didn't say exactly when this happened. I have to think it was either maybe right when Chubb went down or maybe when Chubb was down for 1 or 2 weeks. Maybe it was to a team that really needed a running back. Of course, Kareem Hunt was producing before Chubb went down, was producing during that time frame. And so maybe they had a ton of wide receivers. I don't know the exact specifics, but obviously this was a great move. We've seen a few teams now able to trade high in Kareem Hunt because I feel like the vast majority of teams I look at now, you guys all basically took Kareem Hunt because he was, I think, ranked a lot above ECR, above ADP. We had him to target because, it was just an exceptional pick. Whenever you have a player who their floor, basically what's going to happen to them is that they're a start-worthy option. They're probably going to return value at their ADP, and that's their floor. You take it because when you can also say, oh, yeah, if Chubb goes down, it didn't happen. Chubb went down for a little bit. Hunt wasn't necessarily a top 5 option, but that was in his range of outcomes. There was definitely a chance that when Chubb went down, Hunt was a top 5 running back. And so when you have a floor of returning value and a ceiling of crushing value, take him every time. So obviously he was a good pick. And then when that scenario started to unfold, flipping him for Calvin Ridley, yeah, that was great. A few waiver moves that really helped. Added Swift off waivers in week 4. Have to think that someone was just fed up with him not producing. He had 8 carries through the first 3 weeks. He had 6 snaps in week 3. And so I'm sure someone in his league looked at that and was like, nope, I'm done with this kid. And of course, we know that Swift was an incredible buy low for most of the season because we knew it was going to be his job at some point. Added Kittle in week 10. The league did not have an IR spot. And so I'm sure someone just dropped him being like, hey, he's probably done for the season. I need this roster spot. I wouldn't fault anyone for having dropped Kittle, but he didn't need the roster spot. And so he said, hey, if he's just going to produce in 1 week in the championship, and that's a benefit to me, I'm going to take him. So that was a good ad. And then Jalen Hurts. I've been looking, like I said, I was trying to look for an RB0 team. I genuinely think that 30 or 40% of people who subscribe to us had Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. It's incredible. Every team I looked through, it was final roster, Josh Allen and Hurts. Final roster, Josh Allen and Hurts. Literally everyone. It's just crazy. I don't know if Josh Allen was that much higher on consensus or if we were a little bit earlier on Hurts. I don't really know what it was, but it was crazy how many of you had both of them. I had both of them in the league that I went to the championship in, or I guess one of those leagues. And I can tell you that, like, looking back, it's like, oh, that was, really lucky having Allen and Hurts. But then there was also the fact that, like, I was sitting there every single week. Like, I genuinely don't know which one of you I should be starting. And that was a problem I had in the beginning of the season with Newton and Josh Allen. I basically had to say, you know what, I'm cutting Newton. I was just like, I can't deal with this anymore. Having two good quarterbacks, I don't know who to start every week, and I'm always wrong. I just wanted to go with one of them. So I know that was definitely a little bit of an issue for a lot of people, having both of them being like, listen, they're both scoring like 25, 30 points. I don't know which one's going to go for 40 this week, though. So a little bit of a difficult dilemma, but a better dilemma than the people who didn't have anything. So we see that. We'll pull up this, and this is the final roster. So pretty much the same as what he drafted, but we've got Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Devonta Adams, Calvin Ridley at the 2 wide receiver spots, Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor at running back, starts Kittle on the final week of the season, and then Allen Robinson at the flex. For the bench, has Josh Allen, has DeAndre Swift, Antonio Gibson, McLaurin, Mike Gesicki. They did have kickers. So Tyler Bass is a kicker. I'm sure he just drafted a little bit earlier, and so the strategy basically being, hey, someone gets hurt, maybe it was the Travion Williams pick, honestly. If Mixon and Bernard get hurt, then I'll have him. If not, that's my kicker spot. That's a good strategy. And then he had the Eagles and the Rams defense. So we will flip back here to season result. Pretty simple. Wins the championship. Said he was able to with the winnings buy his girlfriend an engagement ring, so that's pretty cool. I think he said the payout was really, really nice in that league. So if we go through main takeaways, I haven't made, I think next week I'll go back to that sheet. Remember, each time we get to this main takeaway section, I'm taking the biggest takeaway from each one of these and putting it into like one document so that when we're looking back at our mock drafts, looking at next season, we can look through this and basically say, hey, here are all of the takeaways we had from last season. This is how we should be constructing our teams. The main takeaway from this team is upside. Every single person you draft, you need to describe how they can be a 1 or a top 5 option. And so when we go through his team, he checks it in almost every single spot. Jacobs, we went into the season saying he's getting all the early down work, he's getting the goal line, and there's talk of him getting more of receiving game work. Now that did end up happening. He got more involvement in the receiving game. It just didn't work out to where it was like enough involvement and they were like good enough to be a top 5 option, but he absolutely could have been a top 5 running back. Adams, we just saw him crush this season. He had a historic season for the wide receiver position, but going into the year, he was a clear alpha for Aaron Rodgers. Like, obviously he has upside. Allen Robinson was coming off 98 for 1150 and 7 touchdowns, and there were more targets available with people leaving, so he clearly had wide receiver 1 upside. Jonathan Taylor was just an insanely talented running back on a team that wanted to run the ball. And a team that we thought was going to have a really good offensive line. They had some injuries, and so that didn't fully work out. But imagine if they didn't have some injuries in the offensive line. And imagine if Rivers was he was like a little bit dust this last season. I'm not going to say he was horrible, but he definitely wasn't good. And so imagine if he hadn't seen such a drop-off and he targeted Taylor a little bit more, because Taylor actually wasn't even that targeted this season. Oh my goodness, the upside for Jonathan Taylor was nuts. Obviously gets bailed out a little bit with Marlon Mack getting hurt, but I have to believe that he would have followed a similar path. Maybe he would have had less involvement for more of the season, but to end the season, you got to think he was going to break out at some point. Terry McLaurin, well, he was the clear top wide receiver, and he is much more talented than most people think. I think because he's on Washington, and they're not like they're not a high-end market. They're not typically a great team. Maybe he didn't get as much attention from the public, but he's a very talented receiver and was clearly the top option, so a ton of targets were going to go to him. Kareem Hunt, talked about that. He's a flex while Chubb is healthy, a 1 when he's out. Josh Allen, I was going into the season thinking that he could be this season's Lamar Jackson. Antonio Gibson, once we have Geis and Adrian Peterson gone from the team, he was pretty clearly going to be the lead back. Mecole Hardman, imagine if Tyreek Hill goes down. We've got Mecole Hardman as an every down receiver with insane speed. What does he have, like 4.3 40 speed on a Patrick Mahomes offense with Andy Reid as a coach? Yeah, that's a lot of upside. Gesicki and Jonnu Smith, both of them insanely athletic tight ends for Gesicki, an ascending offense. For Jonnu Smith, an already ascended offense, a really good offense. Jalen Reagor, a talented rookie who they invested first-round draft capital in, and they needed talent at the wide receiver position. Doesn't work out because he gets hurt to start the season, but there's definitely a world in which he breaks out this year, and I think he breaks out sometime in the future. The one pick I didn't really like was this Drew Lock pick, just because, yes, if you want to talk yourself into the upside, he could have been 2019 Jameis Winston. I mean, he is an aggressive quarterback. I'm not going to say he's mobile, but I think he's more mobile than his numbers that he puts up is. But an aggressive quarterback and one who's surrounded by talent. Before Sutton gets injured, he had Sutton. He's got Jerry Jeudy. He's got Locke. He's got Lindsey and Melvin Gordon. So he had a lot of talent around him. And could he have taken a step forward and produced a really nice season in fantasy? Could have happened. But again, you already had Josh Allen, so I would have preferred a running back or wide receiver there. Defense, just pick a defense you think is going to be good. Just take them at the end of the round. And then Trayveon Williams, I kind of think at this point, that was basically, does Mixon get hurt and they use Williams over Bernard because he's kind of old? Maybe he's dust at this point. Maybe that was the thinking, but then, hey, if that doesn't happen, I need a kicker, so I'll just drop him regardless. So that's the takeaway from this team. Is you need to look at the path for all these players. Maybe I'll do a video kind of like this, talking about different rounds for the upcoming season, sometime in the summer, where it's okay, here's the 5th round. Look at these 3 or 4 picks. Can we even think of a path in which this player produces as a wide receiver running back 1? And if we can just start crossing players off throughout the draft, it's going to make it much more easy for us to hit. You're not always going to hit. You're not always going to draft a team like this. But more often than not, if you're only drafting players who have upside, you're going to hit on 3 or 4 of them. And since that's the only goal of the draft, you're going to win more often than you lose. So, hope you guys like this one. Remember, tomorrow we're going to do the Dynasty video for wide receivers to target in Dynasty leagues. And then also the promo code. If you sign up for any package now through, I guess, what are there, 30 or 31 days in April? I don't even remember. But whatever the last day in April is, sign up now through then with the promo code FFA, and you get 15% off whatever package you sign up for. That's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.